Globally, all humans aspire to a better life. We hold big dreams in our hearts, whether it's for our families, in business, or the sheer adventure of breaking boundaries to achieve greatness. When the spark of motivation ignites us to go for our big dreams, our high resolve impacts the whole world. Now we are turning the spotlight on this generation of motivators and the power of positivity in hopes to reach every corner of the earth. We feature leaders who are ready to unleash our full potential as individuals, communities, and countries on the biggest stage there is. This is World's Greatest Motivators. In this episode of World's Greatest Motivators is a very important conversation. The executive producers, David Meltzer, Lynn Kitchen, and Julie Jones Hamilton, welcome Dr. Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, the founder and director of Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, California, with over 10,000 members. He is a best-selling author and is featured in the film The Secret. Reverend Beckwith is the co-founder of the Association for Global Thought, co-director of the United Nations A Season for Nonviolence, and a member of the Parliament of the World's Religions. He is also a renowned keynote speaker throughout the globe. Michael Beckwith is a world's greatest motivator.
We are so happy and grateful that we have an opportunity for an important conversation this evening. My name's Lynn Kitchen. I'm one of the executive producers of World's Greatest Motivators, along with my partner, Julie Jones Hamilton. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Lynn.
And David Meltzer. Hi, David.
Hello.
And tonight, we have a special guest that we're very, very proud to have. The founder of Agape International Spiritual Center, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith. Hello.
Well, hey, Lynn. It's good to see you again. Thank you for the invitation. I'm always here.
Very happy to have you here. You know, for the last 8 or 9 Wednesdays, we've had this public service webinar, in which we've called 30 Minutes of Mindset Masterminding. And it's all been around the pandemic. Until tonight, we have a new topic. We have an unprecedented time, as you were speaking about before we went live here tonight, and an unprecedented opportunity. So we're very, very glad that all of the people are beginning to come on tonight, and thank you so much for attending this conversation. Please let us know where you're coming from. I see Pakistan. Thank you for being here. That's 5 o'clock in the morning your time. While we're warming up with an introductory question, please put your name and where you're calling in from into the chat. We want to honor you. To be a part of this conversation is important. So thank you for being here. Julie, would you like to begin our first question, please?
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so happy you're here, and I'm so happy to be here, too. Hi, David. And welcome, Reverend Michael. Thank you so much for being here. We are so blessed to be with you right here, right now. And in this important conversation, it's so important to have a conversation around focus and mindset. And it is our desire to inspire and motivate others, especially now. So my question would be for you, what would you say to help soothe the souls of those who may be grieving and those who may appear to be in deep conflict right now?
Well, as we're kind of all alluding to, we're in an unprecedented time in human history where not only do you have the pandemic situation, where you have a double pandemic, we have the COVID-19, and we have this awareness of the intrinsic racism that has happened throughout our country, that is now through the egregious act of that police officer, brought more into focus. Not that it wasn't here before, but it's more in focus. So the first thing that happens is there's an outrage, there's a rage, there's an anger, an expression of passion and energy, which obviously leads to protest. And underlying all that, there is a grieving that's taking place, also a grieving for individuals who have died, individuals who have been abused. And then there's a soul grieving that we all have as humanity for everything that's going on. The individuals that are hijacking the narrative and moving towards violence. And then there's the individuals who are really standing up for justice and righteousness. So there's 4 parts to it. I'll get to the grieving question in just a second. There's the rage and the anger. It's pushing the needle towards bringing things into focus. And then going from top down, there must be a vision of where we're going. There must be an articulation of what does a kind and just global society look like? What does a legal system look like that's justice for all? What does proper policing look like? There has to be an articulation of these particular structures, and then there has to be strategy as to how to go in that direction, and then there has to be people to implement that. So right now, we're on that first rung, anger. We're in the first rung, anger, passion. This can't happen again. This must never happen again. The good news is that people are hearing and are beginning to participate in an understanding of how people have been feeling for years, when it has been pushed aside, or people thought it was exaggerated, or it doesn't really affect me. Now everybody is on deck and understanding that these changes must happen. Now, since you're dealing with grief, obviously we can't sweep that under the rug. We have to acknowledge our grief. We have to acknowledge that there's a sense of loss. There's a loss of normalcy. There's a loss of human life. There's a loss of property. There's a loss of a sense of stability. There's a loss of a sense of security. And there's an awareness that all of that is tenuous anyway. There's no, all of that is tenuous. And so that means that we have to aspire to come to a higher level of awareness to discover where security is. You know, it's not in society, it's not in structure, it's just in ourselves. We have to be able to learn how to walk with the sense of being secure, connected to something that is so real. Call it the presence of love, the presence of God, the presence of life itself. So when one grieves, we have to do a couple of things. One, we have to acknowledge the grief. If someone has died, we have to ask ourselves not simply what is the meaning of the death, but how can I give the death meaning? And then that's when we ask that question, we begin to be guided about the qualities that need to emerge in our life that we can dedicate our life to based on what was lost, whether it's a relationship, whether it's somebody that's passed over, somebody that's killed. How can I give my life meaning? Now, here's the law. The law states that whatever question you ask, the universe will answer it. So if you ask that question, after a period of time, the grief, which is energy, by the way, will begin to be transmuted. Sometimes it'll go to anger. It'll also be transmuted into an excitement about your new meaning for life. Am I making sense? Yeah, your new meaning for life will begin to emerge. And you'll start to be guided as to steps to take. So I tell people when people have passed over, don't ask, what is the meaning of this? Ask, how can I give my life meaning? And then the universe takes over, answers come. You start to walk in a different direction. You start to download gifts and talents and capacities within you that you're going to bring forth based on what you lost, based on the individual that you lost, and based on the structures that you lost. The universe is progressive. Life always wins. Love always wins. But we have to participate. And we participate by embracing where we are without doing a bypass around it at all and beginning to ask some meaningful questions.
Yes, that's very powerful. Very powerful. David, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, you know, it seems to me that a few angry people a few angry voices set forth an energy of attacking thoughts and resistance, and exacerbate and accelerate the energy, which is the exact opposite of what my meaning that I want to give and to share with everyone, which is unification. We can use this as an opportunity to unify. I mean, my career in sports with my business partner, Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon, I've always said, why can't we just call quarterbacks quarterbacks? That forget the equality of an African-American quarterback. Why can't we just have quarterbacks? And why can't we just have police abuse gone against, but it's always the same color and the same circumstance with a different name? And how can we give a unified meaning to this, and we don't allow the few to send the energy in the wrong direction? Because I see, especially in the social media side, I'll see 1,000 comments that make sense, unifying comments, and then one comment sets everybody into a spiral of attacking thoughts, judgments, conditions, and anger.
Right. Well, there's always going to be what we call haters that are inciting. Now, the good news that we're looking at, if we look really carefully, we see that everyone is protesting. It's not a black protest. You have Asians, you have Latinos, Latinas, and white people. Everyone is out there, as you're talking about, under a ban of unity, to say this has got to stop, and we need a higher vision of what's possible. Now, there are those who hijack that narrative, the violent anarchists. Now, this is the good news. Years ago, that was never reported. The mainstream media is now reporting that there are individuals that are hijacking websites on the far left and creating this violence. Matter of fact, I had a couple of my guys, a couple of my security guys went out the other night, and they saved 8 businesses from these white anarchists who were trying to burn things down. These 2 guys, they can take care of themselves. One's an ex-sheriff, and he was armed, and the other individual, ex-Marine, very, very talented in the martial arts. They saved 8 businesses from these individuals looting and burning, just to create a narrative of violence. So I think the media is now beginning to report that it's the minority of people who don't have anything to do with the understanding and the ramifications of the death of George Floyd that's causing the mayhem, that the rest of the people are marching peacefully. They're speaking of a higher order of living across the structure of America, all the systems. So if you go back a number of years ago, that would never have been reported. It would have just been said, violent looters are doing such and such. Now they're able to see it's a small group of people that's doing that. And going back to your other point, we want to live in a culture in which we're not defined by the color of our skin. As Dr. King described, we're defined by the content of our character. So one day we won't say, he was a black quarterback, or he was a black writer, or he was an Asian scientist. We'll say he was a scientist. He was a quarterback. He played football. He was a teacher in the school. And I think that the narrative that we're all trying to develop is the narrative that we're all shot from the energy of the source, the presence. We all have these, as Ram Dass once said, we're all God in drag. We all have our incarnations, our gender, our skin color, our sexual orientations. That's the lampshade. But the light is who we all are. And so the narrative of racism that began 1619 when the first ship came over with the forced immigrants and turned them into slaves, there had to be a way to rationalize that. So the Christians of that day deemed that Africans weren't human. They're like cattle, they're like, cows, and so we can use them as beasts of burden. So once that entered into the psyche, and then kids were raised into that, it became a part of the fabric of our society. That's why they called slavery and racism the first sin of America. And so that particular narrative has followed us a long time. Even when slavery was over, there was segregation and Jim Crow, public lynching, police brutality. So now we're at a moment, we're at a watershed moment where everybody's on the street. Paris, France, Syria, where there's a war going on, England, Australia's having their protest tomorrow. So the whole globe is now dealing with this issue that emanated from America, but they're also dealing with their own issues in their own country where this racism is concerned. So we're at a watershed moment that we're beginning to see the possibility one day. He was a great spiritual teacher, not a great Black spiritual teacher. He was a great, person, not just a great woman teacher, but a great being, So I think marathon, not a sprint. So it's going to be the deconstruction of racism, which Black people can't do. That has to be by everyone. And then later on, it'll just be, that's who a person is. We won't necessarily identify them. Though everybody loves the color of the skin, they love their orientation. But I do remember one time I was at Agape and we were trying to remember somebody, and somebody was saying, where's Ron? And who's Ron? And the person could not remember Ron's race. They knew him well. They said, but we thought that was like a really interesting moment. That they couldn't pull what his ethnicity was because the intimacy of their connection was simply from heart to heart, and they forgot it. It was just one of those kind of moments. And I think that's what you're asking about. Can we have more of those moments?
I agree.
So we celebrate our incarnation, but we don't just overly identify with it.
That's beautiful. Reverend Michael, we have quite a few questions here now, and the opportunity is right. People really have come to ask you some questions. So, and I've been trying to categorize them into groups. There's one group of questions that's asking, how do we create healing from where we are or from a place of hurt?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two conversations. I'll hit at it from a couple of angles. One, there's two conversations that I have. I have a conversation with people of color, and I have a conversation with my white brothers and sisters. Two different conversations. People of color, I invite them to begin to do the inner work so they're no longer looking at themselves as a victim. We get rid of victimhood. Begin to heal the wounds, the psychic generational wounds that we carry from slavery up through this moment that have been passed down generation to generation. That's inner spiritual work. Doesn't mean you don't get angry. Doesn't mean you're not protesting. But I'm talking about that has to go hand in hand with deep introspection, deep forgiveness, deep embracing of a strong self-love and appreciation. And then to my white brothers and sisters, the conversation is you have to have a level of compassion and understand what people have been walking through for years. And I think this particular experience is allowing people to see, wow, this has been going on a long time. I remember when I took a group of people to South Africa a number of years ago. It was the year before Nelson Mandela was elected president. And I was invited over to do the vision process in different places around the country to help people go to the next level of how they wanted their country to be. And we were in Soweto, in which Soweto was the most violent city in the world. That's what it was called at the time. And our choir was practicing with the Soweto choir. And suddenly the assistant director of the Soweto choir runs in and says, please get all the white people out of here. The people are coming to get them. So my choir, we're in a very integrated, diverse group. They started laughing. I said, he is not playing. Everybody get on the bus. We hid the white people under the seat. All the black people sat on the seat so you couldn't see our white brothers and sisters under the seats. And I got up to the front and I said, listen, if they come to get us, get the white people, I'm going to say you can't have them because they belong to me. And everybody started laughing. It was we broke the tension. When we were leaving Soweto, the other individuals, the violent folks, were coming in. We passed them like that, but all they could see in our bus was black people. We got back to the hotel and we processed all night. It was the first time that the individuals from Agape, our white brothers and sisters, had a direct experience of what it felt like to have your life threatened because of the color of your skin. And they felt it viscerally. It changed them forever. And the depth of compassion, it began to emerge. That you guys have lived through this? You experience this on a daily basis? Yes. So compassion comes from an inner desire to actually, as our Native American brothers would say, to actually walk a mile in your brother's moccasins. To what if that was me? What if George Floyd was my brother? What if he was my cousin or whoever? We have to ask those meaningful questions. So there's two sets of questions, dialogue, depending on who I'm talking to. So we have to, this is the time to have courageous conversations like we're doing it now. Whereas before, people would say, well, it doesn't really affect me. It doesn't really involve me. Well, there were 4 police officers. One that had the knee on Floyd's neck, 2 that was sitting on him, and the one that did nothing. So we have to ask ourselves, are we the person doing nothing, being a bystander? We see something, we don't say anything. We hear a racial slur, we don't speak up and say, hey, don't do that in my presence. Are we the person that has the knee on somebody's neck? Or are we aiding and abetting? We find out where we are in that. And doesn't this have to be with race? It could be with anything that's out of justice, and begin to take stock of ourselves so that we become growth-centric. We become desiring to grow, to become a better human being. And this is what this particular event is calling for us to be better, and also to deal with the structures that have systemic racism in it, to change those structures. But as we all know, to have an enlightened society, you have to have enlightened people. You have to have loving people. You have to have people that are willing to grow and unfold, have a fierce courage to have these kind of conversations and to change perspective when necessary.
Thank you, Reverend Michael. Regarding mindset, what mindset will that require? What will it take?
There's mindsets and there's heart sets, I like to say. And when we develop a mindset, it becomes subjective, it becomes our heart set. So we have to have a mindset, first of all, there has to be courage. Courage means, the word courage comes from meaning taking heart. So we have to have courage to go beyond our comfort zones. The comfort zone is death. The comfort zone is stagnation. The comfort zone is, I'm just going to stay here and eke out my existence based on what I have already. So we have to take heart, come out of our comfort zones, and have difficult conversations. I was speaking with a group of people recently, and one of them was Kevin Ross, and he was saying that, like, for instance, our white brothers and sisters have to talk to each other about it. You know what I mean? And really get on board. I can remember when I was at many years ago, before Agape, I was asked to speak at a community in Fullerton, and it was mainly a white community. I don't have any problem with that. And but when I spoke there were people in this pews that didn't know they were sitting next to racists, and the racists were sitting there, didn't know that the person sitting next to them wasn't a racist, and maybe they didn't call themselves that, but they had racist tendencies and beliefs about people being inferior to them. When I came on the scene, everything was revealed, and it was quite a reckoning for that spiritual community. So, what was the question again? I think I'm answering it, but
mindset, heart set.
Oh, so the mindset has to be courage. You have to have a level of courage to come out of your comfort zone and be involved in difficult conversations right now, and that leads to a heart set, as we talked earlier, of compassion and love. We're going to build a society on love, and love is not a sweet, sentimental thing. Love is the presence of God, totally giving of itself, totally and completely. And the mindset must be ultimately, we have to have that kind of transcendent love that goes beyond our kin and beyond the color of our skin. That kind of love. And this is where we have to grow.
Thank you, Reverend Michael. Naman asks, but racism has been endemic in our culture for so long, the annihilation of indigenous cultures. What is different about this time that has brought this global attention to such a poignant moment?
I think it's a combination of the fact that there's been a lot of deaths close to each other. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud, that was killed by the two supremacists, shot down as he was jogging. Ahmaud Arbery, the woman that was shot in her home. I think there was such, and social media has provided the video of these things. Whereas before, please understand, these things haven't just started. You know, Black and brown people have been pointing the finger to it for a while, but people kind of like, yeah, I don't know, the police were justified. You know, maybe they were doing something wrong. Maybe they were on drugs. Maybe. But I think with the advent of everybody videoing, and we're seeing a lot of these cases, like the man last year was shot in the back, running away and murdered. I think with the advent of the video showing these things, and a lot of them happening so close together, there became a buildup of energy. And when this gentleman, well, I don't know about, he wasn't a gentleman, but when the man had the knee on the neck and there are people shouting at him, he can't move, he can't breathe, get off of him, you're killing him, you're killing him. And he had his hand in his pocket, and he's oblivious to the beings shouting at him. He doesn't care. And then 3 minutes after he goes listless, he finally gets up. They take the body away. The man had already passed over. And I think his callousness provided the context for this lightning to hit. It's like, oh no, this is just too much. Something has to be done. And now it's gone global. The one in Paris, France, is reminding the French people of the man that was killed last year. Same thing, chokehold, African man, 3 white police officers killed him. And so all of this is being rolled into the systemic racism that is found throughout the globe. So this was, I'm really hoping that, I've been saying that George Floyd, we want his life to be made sacred, meaning the word sacrifice means to make sacred. So we want his life to be sacred, that it actually creates a change. It actually creates the conversation. It actually creates the examination of policing, actually creates the understanding of who you hire, how you train. There's, barbers get more training to get a license to cut hair than a police officer gets in shooting a gun. And a police officer only needs a high school diploma to become a police officer. So we got to deal with our, so perhaps George Floyd's death will be made sacred if we can have real meaningful changes in all of these particular structures.
Thank you. We have so many more questions that we probably won't have a chance to have, but we want to thank everyone for the questions that you have. And we also have taken notes here, and we'll get the questions answered. Final question from David, and then we have a great special announcement, a free gift for everybody from Reverend Michael. So make sure that you stay right up to the very end. Last question.
Let me say this. Go right ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you said it was a marathon, and I think that's a really key component, because I think part of the problem with systemic change is that most people quit.
Yeah. In the scripture it says that
29% of the people quit, 25%. Go ahead. I was gonna say, can you talk about inspiring people not to quit on this one? Let's I've switched my whole training on Friday. I've been training for 20 years for free, It's all about this, and being able to, my main purpose is to continue the conversation. There'll be plenty of other news. I guarantee both political parties will have distractions, and everybody's going to try to get our mind off of this. I'm 52 years old, and from the day I was born, this has been an issue in my family, in my neighborhoods, in my life, and everybody quits. I was there with Rodney King at Occidental College, right there in the middle of LA. What can we tell people when they get the apathy and the attention span drains? How can we continue this? Because what's going to make the change is not quitting on this one.
Absolutely. I think what we're talking about here is a way of life. It's not just a one and done kind of thing. It's like, how do you live your life? So everyone has to ask themselves this question: what is it that's mine to do? Everyone can't do everything, but everyone can do something. So if you ask sincerely, what is it that's mine to do? Am I to write my congressman, my councilman, my senator? Am I to be on the streets protesting? Am I to be inside of one of these systems being a voice for change? Am I to make sure that my kids don't succumb to white privilege or understand what it is, so that they're able to identify it in themselves and help make the world better? Everyone has something to do. So if everyone can grab what it is that they're called to do and then integrate that into their way of living. So it's not just something they do one time, but it's something that is the way we live our life. Like you meditate on a regular basis, you pray on a regular basis, you serve on a regular. There's certain things that are integrated. And so where this particular issue is concerned, or issues that are akin to it, we have to ask, what is it that's mine to do? And you integrate it into your life. And I'm telling you, what happens is the sense of stagnancy of the soul begins to be released. You start to touch an intrinsic joy when you're on the right side of history and the right side of the law. I'm talking about the universal law. You feel like you begin to remember your pre-incarnational choice that you made before you got here. That you knew this stuff was going to go on before you got here. You already knew what you were stepping into, and you knew that you came for a purpose, to be a history maker, not just to watch it, not just to watch history, but to be a history maker. So if you ask the question, what is it that's mine to do? You'll start to remember your pre-incarnational choice, that you came during this time when everything is flux, everything is in flux, everything is fluxed up, so to speak. And what we want to do is to have so many people begin to vision the possibility that during this time of great change, the agenda is not stolen by others and can create a different kind of society, but we have the agenda of a kind and just global society based on the ethic of love, based on the ethic of equality. So it is a marathon. What is it that's ours to do? Integrate it into your way of living, and joy will break out of your heart because you'll be doing the right thing, primarily because you'll be being the right person.
That's right. Wow. Very good.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Michael. Reverend Michael has a special gift for everyone. He has a new app. This app can be found at michaelbbeckwith.tv, and it is here for you, for your pleasure. And that way you can have Michael Beckwith in your pocket all day, every day. Or you can go to agapelive.com for streaming around the world, internationally, every Sunday.
Right. Every Sunday. If you go to michaelbbeckwith.tv, then you go to the App Store and download Beckwith Inspires. It's most of the stuff on the app is free. There's a couple of premiums in there, but most of it is free, and I'm going to be updating it on a regular basis.
We want to thank you for being here at this most important time, for this most important conversation. Thank you, Reverend Michael
Thank you.
Beckwith.
Thank you for initiating the conversation. It's so needed right now. So I really appreciate the good work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
God bless you.
Thank you for being here, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye now.
you.
This is World's Greatest Motivators.